Good morning, friends. Welcome to The Well. My name is Ryan Gear. I'm the pastor here. If you're new with us, you're our guest, and we're glad you're here. And if you'd like to let us know, just text the word WELCOME to 480-530-7234. It'll text you back with a digital Connect card. Just fill that out and tell us about yourself. We appreciate you being with us today. If you don't get my weekly email, you can go to wellchurch.org. Just scroll to the bottom of the first page of the website, and you'll be able to subscribe to my weekly email. I send an email every Friday about what's going on in the church. So thanks for being with us today. We appreciate you, and a happy Mother's Day to moms. We appreciate you. Thanks for joining us today, and we're celebrating you today. And today is the 5th week of our series, Reset, Life After the COVID Lockdown. And what we're doing is we're asking, what have we learned during the COVID lockdown that would make our lives better if we remember it after the lockdown ends? How about you? Have you learned some things about patience and kindness and the importance of joy and peace in life and showing love to other people? Have you learned some things about that during the COVID lockdown? And what we're doing in this series, to give some structure to it, is we're using 9 words that come from the letter to the Galatians in the New Testament, written by the Apostle Paul, called the fruit of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, and so on. And today we're wrapping up the fruit of the Spirit with gentleness and self-control. This is a communion service for us, so if you'd like to participate in communion, just have a piece of bread and a beverage ready at the end of the service, and we'll take communion together. And by the way, next week we're going to wrap up this series talking about Reset, the Well. And I'm going to give the survey results from the Return to In-Person Worship Services survey that many of you have taken. If you haven't taken it, you can still get that survey in my weekly email and fill that out. It just takes a minute. And I'm going to announce the results next Sunday, online only here, and then talk about how we're headed forward now as a church. As you know, there's some light at the end of the tunnel. The COVID lockdown is not over. We have not won yet over COVID, but there is maybe some light at the end of the tunnel. And so we'll talk about what the well is going to look like over the next few months. And thanks for participating in that survey. So now, to give our message, we're going to welcome Aaron Stritzel today. And Aaron is talking about the fruit of the Spirit: gentleness and self-control. Let's watch.
Well, hello. My name is Aaron Stritzel. It's great to be back with you. Before we begin, happy Mother's Day to all you moms out there. We appreciate all you do. Hopefully there's a way that you feel spoiled, appreciated, and loved, cared for by those around you. And I just wanted to start off saying happy Mother's Day. Today we continue on, actually conclude our sermon series we've been on, titled Life After COVID Lockdown. We've been looking through the lens, really, of the fruits of the Spirit found in Galatians 5:22 and 23. Well, the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Each week we've been diving into 2 of these as we've walked along, and what we've been doing is reflecting back on this year. Life after the COVID lockdown is really meant to be what happened last year, what did we learn about ourselves, and specifically about the 2 fruits that we've been, kind of 2 characteristics that we're studying for that week, and how do we navigate into not just a new normal, but a better, healthier future. So today I'm going to hone in on the last 2, gentleness and self-control. We've been talking about the Greek words for each, since the New Testament, Christian scriptures, was written in Greek. The first Greek word for gentleness is prates. It was used one time here, prates, in gentleness. The word for self-control is the word enkreteia. It was used twice in the Bible. First here in Galatians 5:23, self-control, and the second time in 2 Peter 1:6, where the author writes the following: "For this very reason you must make every effort to support your faith with goodness, goodness with knowledge, knowledge with self-control, self-control with endurance." So reflecting back on this idea of gentleness and self-control. Gentleness, one definition says that gentleness is the quality of being kind, tender, or mild-mannered. Definition of self-control says self-control is the ability to control oneself, in particular one's emotions and desires or expressions of them in their behavior. So last time I kind of hit on this idea of kindness being gentleness. So since kindness and gentleness are very similar, in fact, one definition says kindness is being, or gentleness is being kind and tender. And it's similar to self-control, mild-mannered self-control. I wanted to really hone in on self-control. So where we're headed today, I wanted to talk about my own lack of self-control this last year. Hopefully you'll find some way to relate to that. That's funny. I wanted to talk about a better way of looking at self-control and our emotions in general, and then invite us to reflect back on all of the fruits of the Spirit as we conclude this sermon series together. So, a couple of my own lack of self-control. As I mentioned last time I talked, 2020 was hard for me, like it was for a lot of people. Lots of stuff going on. We were right in the middle of COVID lockdown, early middle, I would say, pretty early middle actually. And my family and I, we went for a hike, and it was a long hike. We got back, and my wife and I were like, we don't have any energy to cook dinner tonight. Let's grab something. So we decided to grab pizza. We called in ahead of time, 30 minutes. We decided on Papa Murphy's. We called in ahead of time so that it would be ready. So by the time we got there, what we noticed, first of all, is they were really busy. Turns out a lot of people lean on the go-to takeouts when you're in the midst of a lockdown, and pizza and Chinese takeout tend to be the two that were like early adopters. People just are used to taking pizza out, right? So we got there, I walked in, and my wife went to the grocery store right next door, basically adjacent to the pizza place, and I asked about our order. And the manager said, "Oh, we haven't got to it yet. It's a ways down. Do you mind waiting outside?" I said, "No, not a problem." I was hungry and tired, hangry, I guess you could say a little bit. I'm just a little irritated. And so I walked outside, but understanding we're in the midst of COVID and there's a lot of people that are coming in and out. So I waited outside. After maybe 6-8 people came in and out, I went back in and inquired. It was about 10 minutes. And the manager said, "Oh, I see your ticket. It's coming down the line. Don't worry, I'll bring it out to you as soon as we get it done." It's like, okay, fine. So I went back outside. A few more minutes later, my wife pulled up and she's like, "What's going on? Where's our pizza?" And I said, they're just bombarded and slow at whatever. I mumbled something. And we waited 5-10 more minutes maybe. Over a dozen people went in at that time, got their pizzas. And my wife finally was like, "Are you sure that our pizza's not done?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm sure." I went in twice and they told me they bring it out, and it's a glass door. They can see me right here. And finally she's like, "Oh," so she walks in and inquires, and I'm standing by the door just to open it for her. And turns out they had made our pizza and just stuck it on the rack there, which made me ticked instantly because I'm tired, I'm hungry. And I'm like, I went in here twice. So I looked at the guy who grabbed the pizza and I was like, "I went in here twice and you told me to wait outside." And he didn't apologize, but he said, "Oh, sorry, didn't say sorry. He said, "Oh, it was a mistake. We've been busy. Honest mistake." And I said, "That's freaking ridiculous." Only I don't think I used that word. And I stared him down, and I was like, I don't usually get that mad about something, but food, I guess, is one of those things when you're tired and in the midst of a global pandemic and you want pizza. Speaking of pizza and cheese, I tend to eat fairly healthy most of the time, but I do find myself slipping into these sort of, not binges, but like sleeping into these unhealthy patterns. And I found myself early 2020 giving myself a snack once a week, nachos, right? I'm an adult, I can have nachos once a week, great. But by early 2021, what I found myself doing is not only having a snack of nachos, but having a dinner of nachos. Not only having a dinner of nachos, but having a dinner at least 2, sometimes 3 times a week. I feel bad admitting that. It was nachos. I'm an adult, I can make my own decisions, right? I want nachos. So somehow that became my dinner multiple times a week. And my excuse, my wife's a naturopath, she brings in the health food, she tries to help us eat healthier. My excuse, at least to my wife, is that I'm from Wisconsin. It's the cheese state, like cheese is in my veins, right? It doesn't work for her, and it's kind of disgusting, probably at multiple levels, to think cheese is in your veins, because it quite literally probably is in a form of cholesterol there. But needless to say, I found myself lacking in self-control, at least when it came to nachos. And I also found myself, as I began to realize this, in what I would call a shame spiral, which is I'm tired, exhausted, frustrated, I'm not sure what's all going on, and I'm binge eating nachos. And then while I'm eating nachos, I'm like, oh, these are so good. And then I'm like, oh, but they're so bad for you. And oh, I feel so full. And why did I eat nachos again? And oh, I'm such a bad person. But oh, they're so good, right? You've ever been there with something? I mean, make me feel like I'm not alone. Put something in the comments that says, I struggled with this over this last year. Whatever that is, right? So let's talk about shame and this shame spiral. What often happens is that we do spiral in this. Whether that's nachos or ice cream or chocolate or alcohol or anger or shopping, we find ways to sort of cope with our emotions in often semi-unhealthy ways. In the beginning, it's just sort of not a big deal, but then if that pattern continues, it can become a big deal, almost an addiction in some ways. I was reading through a book recently called Finding Meaning in the Second Half of Life, written by a depth psychologist, James Hollis. And he talks about this idea that psychology tends to promote a quick fix. So if somebody comes in and they have depression, psychologists tend to offer quickly a pill, some sort of medication. And he's not against medication. He's not saying if you need medication at times, that's a part of it. But he's critiquing the quick fix mentality, where he says, instead of saying what else is underneath there, perhaps you do need some medication, but why do you feel these emotions? What's going on beneath the surface? We quick fix instead of trying to figure out what's going on. Perhaps you've watched the movie Inside Out. It's a Pixar movie. If it's been a while, or if you've never watched it, I'll give you a brief kind of overview. There's these 5 characters. They're really 5 emotions that live in the head of an 11-year-old girl named Riley, who moves to a new place with her family. Those 5 emotions: joy, sadness, disgust, fear, and anger. So they're kind of all in her head, talking to her the whole time. Well, what happens, joy is the leader. And joy is just what you think of when you think of joy: bubbly, optimistic, all these things. Wants the team to work, wants Riley, the 11-year-old girl, that they sit inside her mind to be happy. Makes sense. So she sort of ostracizes sadness. She feels bad about it, wants to include sadness, but it's like, sadness, just don't touch anything. Don't make Riley feel sad. Let's be happy. And especially as she moved to a new place, Joy found herself trying to find ways to jumpstart and make Riley happy and not feel sad. So she kind of ostracized her more. Well, long story short, Joy and sadness they basically found themselves outside of her head in, what is it called? In her mental place of remembering. I forget the name. But they're outside the head, which means that Riley can't feel those emotions. So Riley kind of goes into this numb, flat, I'm not happy or sad, I'm just, And Joy is with sadness, trying to find a way to get back into the mainframe, into her head, so she can bring back happiness to Riley. And as she's doing it, it's a long story there, but she realizes that actually sadness plays a very important role in Riley's life, especially when it comes to moving on from that new place. And so what she had been doing is stuffing all of her emotions, all of those bad emotions, negative emotions, sadness in particular. And what Joy finally allowed sadness to do was walk through those sad memories with Riley to now be able to engage in something new. It's interesting how when we talk about self-control, especially in religious circles, what often happens is we think emotions are wrong or bad. That's more or less what I was taught. Hey, you can't trust emotions. They're just there. You got to kind of stuff them down. We didn't use that language, but more or less that's what I understood. Stuff down those emotions and be happy. Be positive. Be Christ-like, right? Don't be negative. Don't have any of those emotions. When in fact, those emotions are a God-given gift meant to often help us understand ourselves better. We often mistake self-control for not having emotions. Rather, self-control is about connecting more deeply to our emotions, and instead of reacting from them, becoming curious as to what they are trying to tell us, so that we can help navigate and manage ourselves. Our emotions are there telling us, meant to tell us something. And if we stuff them down, that's not helpful. Of course, if we just let them rise up and do whatever, that's not helpful. But if we become curious about them and allow them to bubble up, then we can learn from them. In fact, this idea of emotions are bad, we just look at the life of a biblical character named King David. Now, if you know anything about King David, he was labeled a man after God's own heart. This man after God's own heart, if you read any of the Psalms, which a lot of them are attributed to David, they're about anger, frustration, bitterness, resentment, envy, loneliness, compassion, sadness, depression. All of these emotions are coming out in the Psalms. This is a man after God's own heart, a man who is deeply in tune with his emotions. Self-control was defined as the ability to control oneself, in particular one's emotions and desires, or the expression of them. I want to highlight that just for a moment, or the expression of them and one's behavior. I think not just having them, but being able to have them, and what do we do with those emotions? What do we do with those feelings? That's where the self-control comes in. It's Mother's Day. We celebrate the way moms nurture us, listen to us, take us to soccer games, make dinner for us, somehow manage to keep the household together and sane in the midst of all kinds of chaos and craziness. There's a stigma also when it comes to women, and it goes something like this. Women are too emotional. We saw this played out even in the last two presidential elections, where a woman was running for the presidency, and people would push back and say, you can't vote for a woman because who knows, if she's the leader and she gets mad, she might start a war, which is, ridiculous, but also ironic in a way, because I'm pretty sure most wars have been started by men, if not all of them, and we've lived in a predominantly male-run society when it comes to leadership for a long, long time. And look where it's gotten us, right? We desperately need female leadership. We desperately need that. Now, I hesitate to say this because I don't want to overgeneralize, and I don't want to cause binary thinking, especially when it comes to gender. But I'm going to do it and then navigate that a little bit. I think, by and large, most women are more in touch with their inner lives, with their feelings and their emotions. Most men tend to have to work harder, or it's a societal thing, especially in the West, to kind of stuff those emotions down. You don't show emotions. You don't shed a tear. You don't do, it's a manly thing, right? That's a stigma, but it's also true that men were kind of groomed to be that way. So when men are emotional, it's not the norm, where it should be the norm, or at least we should be able to learn from you women out there on how to get in touch more with those emotions. Also, I think women, in large part because of their menstrual cycle and other things, they're more in touch with the cycles of nature in general. They're more in touch with the fact that we are connected by sources and energies that are outside of us. Needless to say, we need more women leadership. We need more women influence. We need men out there to be humble enough to learn from women in this way. Again, not trying to make anybody upset, just trying to say, in hopefully a healthy way, like women have a leg up. They have a connection that's already there that us men have to work harder for. It's interesting to note, too, the influence, the role the women had actually in the life of Jesus. Did you know that Jesus' public ministry was funded by women? We read in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 8, that soon afterwards, Jesus went on through cities and villages, proclaiming and bringing the good news of the kingdom of God. The 12 were with him, as well as some women who had been cured of evil spirits and infirmities. Mary, called Magdalene, from whom 7 demons had gone out, and Joanna, the wife of Herod's steward, Chuza, and Susanna, and many others who provided for them out of their resources. What's interesting is so much is attributed to the 12 male disciples, but it was actually women that funded, that allowed Jesus to be able to travel and preach and teach and heal. Who paid for his meals? A group of women. It was women who understood what Jesus was doing and were generous enough to really propel that movement. Without women, it wouldn't have happened. Of course, when we think of the disciples, we often think of the 12 male disciples, but recent scholarship has suggested that there's at least a few, if not more, women that were a part of Jesus's inner circle, that we should probably rightly name disciples as well. So women have a lot to offer, and they had a lot to offer in the life of Jesus as well. Some practical thoughts on self-control. There's been some studies that suggest this, that self-control or willpower is like a reservoir. You don't have, it's not like a river. You don't have unlimited access. You can use it up. For example, there was this study done by a psychologist where there was a group of people they divided it up into. And in one group, they gave them fresh baked chocolate chip cookies. So, by the way, if it's not pizza or nachos, it's chocolate chip cookies for me, or cookie dough. Just go to the store, buy cookie dough, and I plan to make cookies, but sometimes don't get around to it because the dough's gone because I ate it before I cooked it. So cookies, chocolate chip cookies. The other group were in the room. They smelled the cookies, but they were told they could only eat radishes. All right. So which group would you want to be in? I know for me. And afterwards, after they were given that food to eat, they were given an impossible geometry puzzle. And what they found is those that ate those chocolate chip cookies consistently lasted longer, roughly on average 20 minutes before they gave up and said, I can't figure this out. Now those that ate radishes lasted shorter, roughly about 8 minutes on average, and said, I can't figure this out. Now, what this study and others like it are showing is that if you use your self-control, your willpower for one thing, i.e. not eating chocolate chip cookies and saying, I'm going to eat something healthy, that means that you have less willpower to give to something else. Now, that may sound kind of like bad news, and there's debate on whether that's true. It's called, what is the name called? Ego deflation or ego depletion is the word. And I don't know if it's 100% true. There's some critiques on that because I think you can grow. It's not always you run out of self-control and you can't help yourself at all. But I will say that I've noticed myself in stressful situations, when I feel stressed, it's harder for me to neglect the chocolate chip cookie, forgo the nachos, say no to pizza when I'm stressed or whatever, and I have this other things that I'm trying to manage. It's easier for me to go to that thing. So if you find yourself doing that, just know that's part of being human. That's normal in many ways. And this, let me share just my personal experience. So I talked about nachos, right? Well, what I realized over time, I didn't know this in the beginning, but what I realized over time is that I was in a job, in a setting, where I was not able to be authentic, where it was becoming clear I could not say or do certain things that I felt were true to me. Now, I couldn't have said that at that time, but I think what was going on is I was numbing those feelings that were rising up with nachos, right? And I know this to be true to some extent, at least, because after I left that job, it was so much easier to begin to eat healthier. It was so much easier. I was more motivated. I didn't feel that urge to do so. It was just like a switch that went off. I'm not saying that I eat perfectly healthy, but right now I'm on a cleanse trying to get rid of all that garbage that I ate in 2020 and early 2021. If you're with me, you're not alone. I'm trying to get myself in a healthier position, in a healthier place. But those emotions, those feelings, those urges, at least for me, were the result of something else going on in my life. I'm not saying that's true of all places at all times, that every time you grab a cookie, there's some deep secret that you're stuffing down. That's not the case. But when emotions and things do arise, can you bring them up? Can you become curious? Which leads me to my final thoughts. So as we look back on the fruits of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control, here's a couple of questions I want to invite you to engage with. Number one, what are the 2 or 3 fruits of the Spirit that you find come most natural to you, that are easiest for you? It's not an ego thing. It's just those are easier for me. What 2 or 3 are those? And lastly, what 1 or 2 do you find most difficult? What is that 1 or 2 fruits? What are those character traits that you're like, ooh, I definitely have been struggling with that, especially when you reflect back on the COVID lockdown, the last year, 2020, and everything that happened then. And here's what I want to invite you to. Instead of trying to fix it, I'm going to overcome it by doing this. I'm not sure that's the most helpful way of engaging. I want to invite you to actually just begin to notice. So part of noticing is just naming. This is the thing. Self-control. I ate nachos. I did this. And I noticed that, right? And so noticing it. And then the second thing is becoming curious. Why am I doing that? Now, sometimes you might not know. Sometimes it's just like, and it's not everything you do that you have to be suspicious of. But again, if you see habits, you see feelings keep coming up, become curious and ask, like, what's going on here? Is there something else going on? Is there something deeper? Instead of trying to stuff it down or just fix it right away, allow it and sit with it for a little bit. I want to close with a poem called The Guest House by Rumi. And Rumi is this great poet, and he kind of reflects this idea of welcoming all of these feelings, like Inside Out. Will we welcome all of these? So I want to invite you to read along this poem with me, and then we'll close in prayer. The Guest House by Rumi. This being human is a guest house, every morning a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house. Empty of its furniture, still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. Let's pray. God, we thank you that you created us with emotions, with feelings, with joy and laughter and sadness and tears, that we feel things. It's actually that we feel things that make things meaningful, that help us know we're alive, we're living. That we ask that we would not be ashamed or neglect any of the emotions within, but allow us to become more aware of what we are feeling, to become more connected to those emotions, and then to become curious of the ways that we might be doing things, saying things, acting in ways that aren't true to who we are, but maybe trying to reveal something, that something's going on that's deeper than perhaps we're aware of. We ask for your Spirit's help in this as we navigate into not just a new normal, but a more healthier, whole future together. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Thank you, Aaron, for sharing from your heart today. We appreciate you. And thank you to all of you who are joining us now. We're going to take communion together now. You don't have to be a member of the Well to participate in communion. You just are somebody who wants to follow Jesus. You can sign off on the greatest commandment that Jesus gave, to love God and love others. And you want to be a part of Team Jesus, then we invite you to take communion with us. And so wherever you are, if you have that piece of bread and a beverage ready, on the night Jesus was betrayed, he shared a meal with his disciples. And he took a piece of bread and he thanked God for it, and he broke it, And he said, "This is my body, broken for you. As often as you eat it, remember me." And so now let's consume the bread. And in the same way he took the cup, he thanked God for it, and he said, "This is my blood of the new covenant shed for the forgiveness of sins. As often as you drink it, remember me." Let's drink from the cup. I invite you to pray with me. God, thank you for the fruit of the Spirit. Thank you for a guide that shows us what it's like to live a spiritual life. For those who say, I'm spiritual, not religious, or those who just want to practice some kind of healthy spirituality. This is Paul's answer to what this would look like. And so we thank you for the structure of the fruit of the Spirit, for the guidance and the inspiration of love, joy, peace, and today, gentleness and self-control, things that we desperately need. And as we try to keep in step with your Spirit, as we open ourselves to your guidance in our lives, we believe that you do guide us, and that these qualities, these fruit of the Spirit, can come out of our life more and more, and we can be encouraged, not defeated, not guilt-ridden, but encouraged and inspired because we see you working in our lives and helping us to feel your love, and automatically we just want to love other people, and we feel joy and we feel peace when we open ourselves to you. We thank you for moms and for all of the fruit of the Spirit displayed by moms in our lives. We pray your blessings on them and their families today. And God, as we talk next week about Reset the Well, may we be open to keeping in step with your Spirit and where you're guiding us as we as a church want to see the fruit of the Spirit come out of our church congregation. So thank you for this opportunity and this privilege, and for this act of sharing in communion together. No matter where we are joined in communion with you and with each other. And we thank you for that. In Jesus' name. And everybody said, amen. Friends, thanks again for being with us today. If you're new, you're our guest. If you'd like to let us know, just text the word welcome to 480-530-7234. It'll text you back with a digital Connect card. Tell us about yourself. We have people every week who are new to the well and who text in. And thanks for being with us today. You can also sign up for my weekly email on our website, wellchurch.org, and get information about other things that are happening at the church, including our children's ministry, that's a video-based children's ministry, and our Well Students video ministry for middle schoolers. And you can also experience community on our Facebook page and our group, the Well Message Board. And we have our membership class coming up this Tuesday. And we don't RSVP. I have no idea how many people are coming, but we have a few people who have asked about it. This is our first online membership class. We went into the COVID lockdown when the well was only 11 months old. And we had 2 membership classes before that in person. So we've had some folks who have asked about membership class and decided to have one online this coming Tuesday. So the Zoom link is at wellchurch.org. Just click the Zoom link and join us, 6 p.m. Arizona time this coming Tuesday. It's 9 p.m. Eastern. It's about an hour. We'll talk about the well, our mission, vision, and values, and what it means to be a member, and then you have an opportunity to join at the end. And then the very next day, we're starting a brand new 6-week online Connect group. Travis and Kristen Lovren are leading that, and we appreciate them and their leadership through the lockdown. And they're going to be discussing the book Love Matters More by Jared Bias, who was actually our first guest speaker way back 20 years ago in 2018. When we just started the church, Jared came to talk about the material that is now in this book. And so it's kind of full circle. He tested the material here at the well and then released his book. So you can find that information at wellchurch.org as well. And then next week, we're going to wrap up this Reset series talking about Reset the Well. We're going to give the results of the survey that all of you have participated in. You can still take that survey in my weekly email. And we'll talk about the return to in-person worship and what the well is going to look like going forward over the next few months here as we come out of the COVID lockdown. And join us for an exciting week for us next week. And then finally, thanks to those who give to the well. Couldn't do it without you. If you're new, the offering's not for you. It's for people who say, this is my home church and I want to support it. Thank you for giving. We love you. We'll see you this Tuesday at membership class if you'd like to be a part of that. And then in the online Connect group Wednesday, and then back next Sunday for Reset the Well. Have a good week.